so now we're looking at the latest poll. Granted, it's a small one. It's only about 400 or 500 people that were polled in Politicus. But as of this moment, today, the latest poll in the primary that apparently is not actually happening is Joe Biden is now below 60%. That's pretty bad. So you've got RFK at 19%, and you've got Marianne at 11%, with 10% undecided. If you ask me, that's literally heading for a cliff right now. What do you think is ultimately going to happen? Do you think a real noted big name like a Gavin Newsom or a J.B. Pritzker is going to ultimately get in this race when it just, every day that passes, it looks more and more like Joe is just a complete sitting duck?
Well, here's the predicament. And I don't have any inside intel, but this is what I think is going on. I actually think Biden, if it were up to him, did not want to run again and would have just kind of, I was the bridge to the new generation or whatever bullshit he pushed, that he was going to be a bridge to Kamala or Pete or talk about a bridge to nowhere. But I think the Democratic Party realized they kind of the monster they created in the identity politics now is the monster that would scale them, because if Biden comes out, they cannot bypass Kamala Harris. I mean, the DNC, the party would have to back her, or they're going to lose black voters. I'm not saying all black voters would just support her because she's black, but you're talking about the first woman vice president, the first black woman vice president, and the most loyal, consistent Democratic voter is older black women. And they would not be, I think you'd have a real chance at a depressed vote among your core base if you toss the first black vice president, especially the first woman vice president, and you also take out the option of having the first female president. So they would have to go with Kamala Harris, and that's a guarantee of losing. I mean, I think Kamala Harris could lose even to go down to Nikki Haley or someone.
Well, I actually think so will Joe. I think so can Joe. And I think it actually doesn't matter who the Democrats put up. That's how bad it is. I don't think it'll matter. That he's been so bad. And as somebody who did regrettably suck it up and vote for him, I will not do so again. Under any circumstance whatsoever, I will not do so again. And I know that I'm not the only person in that camp. And being that he barely won, and it was a pandemic, which really was more like Trump lost than Joe won. Like Joe barely won, and he barely won in Broward County, by the way.
He didn't campaign,
but
he didn't leave his house
because he still really can't. So the point is, he can't win again. I don't see how that's possible.
I think that you got to look at it. I think you're right in that it was more Trump. Trump lost it. I particularly think at that point on the COVID issue. And then when you look at the midterms, it was basically that the Supreme Court lost it for Republicans, not that Biden did anything, because they basically, the data showed it was the overturning of Roe v. Wade. So if you don't have one of those particular specialty issues, whether it's COVID or abortion, unless Trump or DeSantis are stupid enough to put on the table, I'll sign a national abortion ban. I don't think either of them are. Trump's trying to basically
I didn't think they were, but DeSantis is now pushing those limits. So, maybe.
But I'm saying they're not, unless they give the DNC an early Christmas, which is I will sign a national abortion ban, which I think would be the same as the midterms, and people would come out and hold their nose. Yeah, I agree with you. I don't know about Nikki Haley and the opening act Republicans, but I think Trump would beat Biden at this point. DeSantis would. I think Pence, if he got out of a primary, could as well. And I think at the end of the day, I don't think Newsom or any of them are going to jump in, because he's a young enough guy that he would just either wait for Biden to drop out and then jump in, or just go in 2028. But I do think on the progressive side, I honestly think it's a shame that all we have right now is Marianne Williamson. I think she's a nice lady. I don't have anything against her. On policy, I tend to agree with her on most things, but I don't think she right now is running the campaign that could deliver an unprecedented victory over an incumbent president. I think the only person that could do that type of person is somebody that's willing to borrow from Trump, for lack of a better word, not the bad stuff, but like come out there swinging, calling Biden corrupt, calling him a failed president, pointing out that he's abandoned I think the mood of the electorate right now is less wanting inspiration and more wanting a fighter, particularly on the primary side. Yeah. I think that besides the anti-vax stuff, which is, in my view, why he's rising, I think part of RFK's appeal to some people is that he's pointing out corruption. He's pointing out the subsidies and crony capitalism. I think most of it's the anti-vaxxers, which is another story. But I think if Marianne had that other gear of actually willing to go against Biden, I think she would increase in the polls because, the media can't help themselves. They will cover it if she's slinging arrows at Biden, if there's conflict. But in the times I've seen her given the opportunity, including when I interviewed her, she's kind of doing what Bernie did, which is like just talking about the issues and not willing to go against Biden. I don't really get why are you running if you're not willing to run against your opponent, particularly an incumbent president? Doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So at this point, I think the DNC would kind of be forced to hold at least one debate if either of them sniff like 25 to 30%, because then you're in the territory of losing the general, because those people might not vote for you if you just will not hold a primary and just say, fuck it, you're against democracy, I'm not voting for you, I'll just vote third party or not vote. But if it hovers around 19 to 20%, I think they could just keep, closing their eyes and hoping it passes.
Yeah. If I had to pick right now, I'm with RFK. I don't need to agree with him on everything. I actually don't necessarily know his position on everything, but I do know that he's anti-war and that he wants to pardon whistleblowers. And quite honestly, that's a pretty good win for me. He's an environmental person, but I don't need somebody who's a progressive. I just need somebody who has a certain amount of substance and qualification for a certain job. And then you kind of go from there. There's a baseline of basic qualifications. And when you ask, why would somebody do that without any real interest in challenging it? I don't know.
And the thing that,
I think it's hard. And this is not just unique to RFK, but my North Star and my compass in politics is I don't really care what people say. I care what they've done. So I don't really care what he's particularly saying about Ukraine. I care about his history. I don't buy this anti-war. He was for Hillary Clinton like 4 times. He campaigned with Hillary Clinton. He, as far as I know, was not against Iraq and other high-scale wars. I don't really see him pushing like cutting the military budget significantly. I don't see him like cutting the drones out, which Biden and Trump have doubled. On the Ukraine issue, I think he's seeing kind of opening, particularly among the left, that wants out of Ukraine and doesn't want to be involved in this war. And I think he's capitalizing. But his history and his public policy prescriptions are not somewhat of anti-war. More troubling than that, I mean, he's not. I get what you're saying. You don't need a progressive, but he's your standard corporate Democrat. I mean, he's not for Medicare. He's not for Medicare. He's not for Medicare for all. He's not even for a public option. This whole stuff about like there's nobody who loves free market capitalism more than me. Like, no.
Yeah, no,
yeah. I don't. And like I said, I don't have to agree with somebody at this point. If those were the 3 choices, that's the pick for me. It's a no brainer on that. But like, and the other thing about him is I looked at what has he done for the past 20 years. And what he's done for the past 20 years is litigate on behalf of all different kinds of people against bullies like Exxon in the U.S. Navy and litigate cases against them, like in environmental circumstances like Steve Donziger. So what he's done as an attorney, as an environmental attorney, speaks a lot as to who he is. Now, like you said, I'm looking at his actions. He doesn't have political background, so I can't say, oh, he's voted on this or he's voted on that. He hasn't. But the fact that he has spent the better part of 20 years fighting on behalf of Indigenous people, to me, is somewhat compelling. That's what it is. And like I said, it's not like we have this huge assortment of which to choose. And there is no universe where I'll vote for Joe Biden again. Like that's never going to be.
I think for me also, and this isn't a knock on you, but for me, I think there's certain things you could compartmentalize. Like, all right, I don't like X, Y, Z, but for these reasons, I'm going to overlook that. For me, it's just a non-starter with the anti-vax stuff, because that kind of stuff kills people. I mean, I'm not saying he's a killer, but when you have pushed, I mean, forget COVID, just for years, when you have pushed just really, really dangerous misinformation that has been debunked time and time again, particularly on autism and a lot of other things he's pushed. And let's be clear, I mean, his foundation is making bank on this stuff. Not that he needs any more money. He's a Kennedy. No. To me, that's just a non-starter, because to me, that's a moral issue. So that's my perspective on him. But then again, like, you know, I think that a lot of people are attracted to him because I think they've been kind of conned by certain people that we don't name on this podcast into thinking like being anti-vax is anti-establishment, or like not believing science means
for me, the anti-vax thing is neither here nor there with him. Like, I didn't know that about him until people said that about him, and that's just not a thing for me. Like, that's just not my. That's not a bridge I'm going on.
It's not ultimately going to prevent, you know, people getting what they need in terms of medication. But the fact of the matter is, you know, and this is my biggest issue with RFK is that he's not an advocate for universal health care. And why the hell he's not makes absolutely no sense. If he's so concerned about big pharma and these vaccines not being safe, why the hell are you not advocating for defanging big pharma out of the equation? Like, that would make all the sense in the world. And the fact that he's not doing that, to me, is a huge red flag. With that said, just the fact that he is creating a stir of such major proportion already, and we haven't even begun the campaign season, which doesn't really begin until the fall. The fact that this is even happening already should be a major red flag.
I don't know about that. Doesn't really. It's already, I mean, that's all the media is covering. You don't have to wait till the fall.
But I don't know how much the people are really vested in it just yet. That's what I'm saying. Right. You know, like, for example, once the GOP has their first debate in the fall, like, everyone is going to be focused on that, and that'll become a major
That'll be fun.
That'll be a lot of stuff to talk about. And so I do think on the Democratic side, it's going to be very hard for them to just sell off this idea that we're all just getting in line and doing as we're told. People are desperate and they can't take this anymore.
Thanks for watching. If you want to support our mission to transform politics into service, please like this video, subscribe, follow us on social media, and consider joining our Patreon, where you'll get early access to our interviews as well as other exclusive content. Links are in the description. Peace out.